Earl Boonstra at this strategic planning meeting. We were talking about how to bring in business. And all this consultants coming in telling us what to do. And Earl raised his hand and says, look, cut the crap. How many of you have work on your desk that you should have had done last week? Well, damn it, go out there and get the work done. And that's what the firm was.
They all used to talk about how Brian Sullivan said, strategic planning, hell. Strategic planning is what you do in between lucky phone calls.
We weren't the old silk stocking firm. We were the newcomers.
Dykema came along and was the newcomer, starting out in the 20s. The big corporations, they were the people who controlled the pubs and controlled the environment, and Dykema was the upstart. We may not have been around in the 19th century, but we're better than you anyway.
At the time,
in 1962, Dykema was looked upon as kind of the upstart, a growing and somewhat innovative firm with some first-class partners that they'd hired over the years.
The firm represented entrepreneurs. They represented developers. They didn't represent moneyed interests. They represented people that were actively involved in the community trying to make a name for themselves. It didn't come from much of anything and had parlayed post-World War II Detroit into a successful business. You're representing a bunch of tool and die owners, die shop owners. I mean, these are people that are, running small businesses. And that was kind of the nature and the quality of the Dykema practice. A whole bunch of clients, not any one of which represented more than a few percentage points of the total pie every year.
We take on the small business and hope when we would grow with it, we would see that our fortunes were tied to the fortunes of our client. But early on, we were prepared to make sacrifices to be sure that we could be part of that process.
Well, I think at the time I joined the firm in '72, Dykema's reputation was kind of the up-and-coming law firm. It wasn't too many years after I started that Dykema was the biggest firm in Michigan. And that came about because of the entrepreneurial skills in almost every area of the practice of law. Those were exciting times to be part of that.
A partner would walk into your office and hand you a file, and you couldn't tell him, hey, I'm a tax lawyer, this is a labor matter. You wouldn't say that. Or, I'm not a litigator, this is going to court. You walked into some factory plants, some places you would never otherwise go, met some very successful entrepreneurial people who needed your help. And some of them brought you in as a part of the team.
We had something called County Run. County Run, all the new lawyers had to do it. And I think for a month at a time, you were in charge of going over handling minor motions, of filing papers with the Register of Deeds and so forth. And it was horribly boring work, but it had to be done. And say, I didn't go to Harvard Law School to come and file papers in Wayne Circuit Court. You did it, and everybody pitched in, everybody did their part.
There weren't practice groups. It wasn't as structured. The firm wasn't nearly as big. When I got there, if you lined up everybody by the amount of time they'd been there, I was number 38. It was, we may not be the biggest, but we're the best, and we're ready to grow.
And so during those growth years, I had the benefit of working with all the lawyers, working with the staff and clients and doing exciting things. I mean, every day I woke up and was really anxious to go to work. Always wanted to be one of the first in the office, and it was just, every day it was exciting and challenging. And I could feel the growth and coming to me as a lawyer. But they weren't my clients, were his clients, they were firm clients. And those clients presented really exciting things and big challenges.
And I became an inch wide but a mile deep. I knew my client's business better than they did. You think of people in business and you say, well, have they gone to business school? And I never did get an MBA after my name. However,
being a business litigation attorney at Dykema was like going to business school, because you have to learn about that business and then you analyze how do they get themselves out of this business problem that they have. That's what my work was at Dykema. So in a way, I feel like I went to business school by handling cases, and you handle first in this industry and then some other industry in a totally different context. I felt like I had some aptitude to work on these business issues.
The law firm that became Feeney Kellett started out for a couple months as James P. Feeney PC, which was written, as I recall, on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper.
Pasted on the door.
Pasted on the door of what was actually a storage facility that Dykema had in the basement of the Bloomfield office. That was our first office.
And it was you and I shared an office. You and I had two desks pushed up against each other and basically one phone.
We weren't looking at the litigation landscape at the time. I think that is fair to say.
The next case to walk through the door and how we were going to fund a paycheck a month.
Correct.
We didn't offer any, startling new technology or way of delivering legal services or results, but we staffed matters the way we had to, which was leanly. We worked hard because we had to, and we were very responsive to clients.
But it was a classic example of the advice that Paul Trigg used to give when he was running the firm in the early 70s, that if you are a good lawyer and you achieve a level of excellence within a community, the work will come to you.
So in hindsight, I think we were fortunate to be in the right place at the right time with our model of practice, because as Jim said, no one was doing what we were doing.
I was doing virtually all the work for a small public company, and the company ran into some serious financial problems and finally concluded that it had to file a Chapter 11. And so I went to Paul Trigg and said, what should I do? And he said, well, either send it to Stu Hertzberg, who was not with the firm, or you can do it. Now, I didn't even know where the bankruptcy court was, and I did it, but being given that opportunity to do something I'd never done was wonderful, and it turned out to be the making of my career. I had a review one year, and White said to me, Ron, we have no idea what you do, but keep doing it.
And our plan was, if you had a good idea and you could back it up, we were willing as your partners to give you the runway to be either successful and try to run it out, see if you could run it to ground and build it, or if it didn't work, we would move on to the next idea. We have always been willing to respect and invest in our partners and see if they can deliver on what they see as an opportunity.
You don't consciously develop a practice, it just happens. And if you give the clients a bang for the buck and you work your butt off, it works. It's the old Earl Boonstra, go do the work that's on your desk, get it over with. Clients don't want legal advice. They want business advice from a legal perspective.